Okay, Robert, we begin by telling me your name, where you were born, and what company and regiment you belonged with in the 10th Mountain Division?
My name is Robert Stanton Goyer, G-O-Y-E-R. I was born on October 7th, 1923, and I served with Company H, 86th Mountain Infantry, 10th Mountain Division.
When did you, or can you tell me about your basic training, where you did it?
Yeah, let me tell you how I got started.
Oh, sure.
Move right into that. I was in college at DePaul University in Green Castle, Indiana, for 2 years. During my freshman year, during the middle of my freshman year, the Pearl Harbor, of course, occurred. My father happened to be a reserve officer from World War I, and he was commanding a CCC camp in northern Kentucky at the time. He happened to be up visiting, and my mother was down from South Bend, where I was raised. And we were driving in the country around Green Castle, very nice winter's days, actually. We heard it on the radio, and Pearl Harbor just occurred. We had some sense of what the implications were. Of course, my father immediately went on active duty to a camp. About a month or two after that, I enlisted in the Army Reserve Corps so I could finish that year and perhaps the second year, sophomore year at DePaul, which I was able to do. Called active duty in May of 43. Went to basic training at Camp Fannin, Texas, which was an infantry. It was also had a prisoner of war facility there in Tyler, Texas. And from there, I had applied and was assigned to an ASTP unit, Army Specialized Training Program. And they had a number of areas at that time. The one I was assigned to was for engineering, pre-engineering, and I was sent to Hope College in Holland, Michigan for, would have been a year and a half or something of basic instruction, engineering matters and so forth. And then of course, the big thing came when D-Day, and shortly after that, they closed most, or shut down, or terminated most of the ARP unit, or of the, not ARP, of the specialized training, STRP, specialized training programs. Almost, most of them in engineering. And I was assigned to the 76th Infantry Division, was in training in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. This was in April. Actually, it was a little later than that, but anyway. I got up there, there was still snow on the ground, they were on maneuvers, I remember that. It was colder than a witch's broomstick. And I was with that unit until, let's see, early summer, and I decided that I would apply to OCS. Talked to my company commander, who had also been, I had met through training when I was at Camp Fannin. It just so happened that he was there. Anyway, talked with him, and after talking, he agreed that he would sponsor it, and I got the necessary letters of recommendation. So I applied, and I was accepted. So I went to the Penning School for Boys, so-called, at Fort Benning, Florida, or in Georgia. Let's see, that would have been in, I guess in June of that summer. And on September 30th of 44, if I have those dates right, I was commissioned, went to Camp Landing, Florida, basic training camp, ran a hand grenade course for a month or two. In early April, I received orders to go overseas to Italy. I was assigned to the 10th Mountain, Company H, in early April, some point in there, some exact date I do not recall. And Felix Paletti, who happened to be another second lieutenant, and I were assigned at the same time. This was just prior, they'd just come out of the Apennines, out of the mountains, and were about to cross the Po River. And I rejoined them, say about a week or so, or 2 or 3 days, some short time before that. We crossed the Po, and of course it was pretty firm sledding, sometimes pretty hard going. From there on up, we went up the east side of Lago di Garda after we got up to the lake. And we'd been, I guess, maybe a week or so after we had crossed the Po, and we'd started up the side of the lake. Our company commander and his radio man were in a tunnel. Captain Edie was his name. The tunnel was hit with an 88 round right in the tunnel, and both he and his radio man and several others were killed in that. We continued on up the eastern shore of Lake Garda, and Second Battalion was assigned the duty of the last several days here before we wound up in Riva, where we were when the war in Italy ended on May 2nd. That was the chronology of my experience. And we went to, let's see, we went to Lagern, Italy, I believe it was. We were getting the horse laugh from all the other units as a result of this, because we were to go right back and train for the invasion of Japan. The last one to get to Italy and the first ones to leave for that purpose. And then, of course, we got quite a break. The war ended. We no sooner, I think, set foot on the shore back in the States, and the atomic bomb was dropped. So we were there, and when they disbanded the 10th, whatever the appropriate term is, at Camp Carson, Fort Carson now, Camp Carson, Colorado, I was assigned to the 2nd Infantry Division at Camp Swift, where the 10th had trained before they went overseas for some flatland training. Well, I served the 2nd Division then, they kept me on until I could get rid of us who were about to be separated. And let's see, it must have been, I was in June when I was separated from the service, and I flew back to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, which is the state, of course, I had been in when I enlisted, and separated, and I think it was May of that year the war ended. Then I went back to DePaul that fall, finished my degree, but I stayed in the reserves. And I'd finished my degree at DePaul and went down to Miami of Ohio and finished a master's degree, and learned almost by accident that I was on orders as a reserve officer to report for duty again during the Korean War. And I never did get a copy of the orders, but my father, of course, I've stayed in touch with him. I said, Dad, I don't know what to do about this. I understand from a friend of mine here at DePaul who had also received orders and who had seen my name on his order sheet. I never did receive a copy of those orders. But he says, call and find out and make sure, because you probably are on them someplace officially. I did, I was, and I was recalled. Instead of going to Korea, though, I was assigned to the 43rd Infantry Division, which as a replacement officer, they were in Germany, on the border with Eastern Germany, near Czechoslovakia and so forth. There were 3 or 4 divisions there because of Russian activity on that front. And I was there for about 18 months, a year and a half. My wife was able to join me, and our eldest daughter, I had 4 daughters, our eldest daughter was born in Germany while I was in service there. And I came back there, and I said, well, you know, the state of my affairs now, the Army is not my career choice. So I went back to graduate school, Ohio State, and did a doctorate in communication, psychology, that kind of area. And taught there for a couple of years, and went to Purdue for 8 years and taught. Got some administrative experience, and went to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio for 15 years. And I directed the Communication Research Center there, and was a graduate dean the last couple of years, and vice president for our research and graduate programs. And then I retired from that system, and I was enticed to go out to Arizona State to get a PhD program started, which I did. I was successful with that. And I retired. We stayed there, my wife and I, in Chandler. The university is in Tempe, which is in the general Phoenix area, as you may know. And after that, my wife unfortunately suffered a serious stroke in 1989, and I retired from that system at ASU in 1994, and we lived there ever since, in Chandler, Arizona. I don't know what I may have left out or included that you didn't want, but that's, to the best of my knowledge, I think it pretty well covers the ground in terms of my Army career. But of course, I've been as a combat veteran, and one or 2 got in close calls. I certainly think of the 10th as my division. All that. And, I try to get to these, and my wife is in better health. She did not join me in this particular trip, but I've been active. I've been very active in the Arizona chapter of the National Association of the 10th Mountain Division. Immediate past president for a couple, 3 terms. I'm pleased to continue to participate. It's always good to see old friends here in the battalion, and certainly from the company.
Yeah, that it is. Interested in you mentioned that being in combat, there were a couple of near situations and things. Can you tell me a little bit about those experiences or those incidents?
Well, there were 2 that were really interesting. One could have been more interesting than the other. The first incident that was really certainly caught my attention. We were moving along, I say, the eastern shore of the road. There was a series of tunnels along the road, eastern side of Lake Garda. And those are the Dolomites, the Italian Alps in that area. And our battalion was on the point. I was standing, there were 2 mountains were fairly steep, but there was one area that we passed about as wide as, not as wide as this room, from the door to where you're sitting maybe, where it was kind of open, and it was slightly raised, as high as this table, perhaps a little higher. There was just kind of a little shelf there, and I think it was Econ that was right behind us, and I was standing there at this little cut, and I don't know his name, but another lieutenant, he was a first lieutenant from Econ, he came standing. He was carrying an M1, just kind of like this, you know. I had a carbine on my shoulder, you know. And a squad of light machine gun, 30 caliber machine gun, was going up to set up a kind of a field of fire behind where this came down and see what was going on up on the other way. And getting the machine gun set up, and the squad leader, I guess he was the squad leader, he had moved up ahead, and all of a sudden he heard this commotion, and he started to yell and yell. And they came running back down. He says, "There's a German behind me with a pistol." And about that time, the German appeared and had a pistol trying to shoot it, and it misfired. And as soon as the German appeared, I whipped the carbine off my shoulder, and as I was aiming, this lieutenant standing next to me shot him with his M1. And that created quite a stir. There was no expectation at that point to find any Germans left in there. But they apparently, the conclusion was that he and 2 or 3 others had been hiding in a cave. Somehow or other they had gotten bypassed. Mm-hmm. They weren't there as frontline, troops. They were just, before they could get out of there, apparently the lead members of our company had gotten beyond, they could get out and get away. It was kind of an interesting experience. And about 2 or 3 days before the war ended, well, let me go back for a moment. Right after Felix and I joined the unit, and we had started through the tunnels. It was the first tunnel where our company commander and our radio man had been killed. Units kind of took turns leading. The battalions took turns, who would lead and so forth. They would jump each other and so forth. But we were working our way up along the side of the lake, and I was able to watch one of the amphibious operations that occurred there. It did not involve our company. Quite interesting to watch that. And as we moved up,
English grammar,
pardon me?
I want to do it for 13 people.
Okay, in about 10 minutes?
10 minutes?
10 minutes?
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
All right.
As we moved forward, of course, we had occasion to set up the mortars. I was company and had heavy mortars, and a section of them, or platoon, whatever. And we had the heavy machine guns, 50 caliber machine guns. And on occasion, we would have to stop and at least set up just in case. Well, this road ran through a number of little villages and towns and so forth. And at one point, a couple of days, I guess, really 3 maybe, before the war ended, we got to a point where there was kind of opening, and the company commander who had taken over the first lieutenant said, well, he says, take a team and go up and set up an observation point so you can direct fire on German infantry. There was kind of a plateau that spread out there along the lake at that point. The mountains still on either side, but there was some opening. So I got a crew together, and we started up the side of this road that ran. The road itself was about from there to there, on that side of the room. From mountains over here, some big mountains, and the lake over here. The road was, not real wide, but it was wide enough for 2 cars to travel. And we weren't walking down the middle of the road, but nevertheless, we were on one side. And as we got about 100 yards down the road, so we're going to have to cross anyways when you get up in a kind of ridge to oversee Starbully or where it was right now. And maybe 100 yards ahead of me, not that far, more like 50 yards, I guess. An 88 round exploded. And then another one exploded on that side of the road. The Germans were walking artillery, up the road. When that first round went off, of course, we immediately stopped and said, well, and I noticed that there was a little small, very small ravine, kind of a hollowed out area over here on the other side of the road. And there were a few seconds, of course, between each round. If it had lit on the lakeside, we'd have been cleaned out. I mean, no protection at all. But after that first one went off, we took the cover we had and said, well, no, when the second one goes off, I'm going to run across that road and get in that hollowed out area before the third one goes off. Because there is that interval, it takes some time to launch for. In the meantime, my crew had scattered, as they were instructed to do, and finding cover. And when that second one went off, it was, of course, even closer. I don't know, 30 yards, maybe, whatever. And when that one went off, as soon as that went off, I got up and I raced across that little ravine, a little hollowed out place there. And I got in one corner of it, and I looked over, and in the other corner of it, here was a young guy, not a whole lot younger than I was. This man, I think he was from E Company, who had also found that spot. So he took one corner of that, and I took the other. And I said, of course, it would have been disaster if the third round had hit in the ravine, but it cleared the ravine. I consider that a very fortunate event that it cleared that. I think that was probably the closest I ever came to, that I was aware of, suffering serious harm. And it marched on up, all the way up to our command post, which is another 300 or 400 yards back down the line, before our artillery was able to silence them. But a couple of rounds did go off in that command center area. I think there were some wounded, some light wounded, and some damage, but nothing really major as a result of that. But that was, that certainly caught my attention.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we got back, so I had to get another crew then, and we went back up. We finally got, by the time we got up there and got the observation point looked at, I mean, we were there maybe an hour, and time came to move out because we were moving forward fairly quickly at that point anyway. So we got the observation point established to directing fire, but it turned out to be unnecessary. But that was a kind of an exciting experience, and that's not the word I would have used then, but anyway, I thought that's probably the closest call I had.
That was pretty close.
Yeah, it was plenty close enough.
Yeah.
Then we went on to Riva. Riva is one of the nicest little towns, right up at the northern end of Lake Garda. You were up there, I'm sure, on your trip, were you not? That's a great town. And there was a hotel, a little small hotel called the Albergo Dardo. Dardo was the name of the gentleman who owned the hotel. He, his wife, and a couple daughters or something. Small hotel. And the company was able to take over that hotel. At least it was big enough, it had not a lot of rooms, housed all the officers and the non-coms, and we had other facilities nearby for the rest of the company. And that was very interesting. That was kind of a nice experience then, because the war had ended and it had ended in Italy. Keep an eye on everything. Then we had to pack up from there. Unfortunately, anyway, we did. When the Yugoslavs started to move in, from Yugoslavia, moving into Italy. So we packed up and we went up north of Udine someplace, and I do not remember the name of the village, but we camped out in the mountains, in a little valley, and an old sheep herder up in those hills. I know there's been a war going on of some sort. I mean, he was really an old timer. very, very pretty country up there. But that, we had a confrontation with Yugoslav
Tito.
Tito, his tanks, at some little village, where a bridge over the stream. We're on this side of the bridge, they're on the other side. And they backed off and we went on. So that was secured. But Tito was very aggressive. You don't read a lot about that, but we weren't the only unit, but we were one of the units of our company. Went up to keep an eye on that. Then came the big news that we were going to go back to Florence. I believe it was, yeah, back to Florence. And we did bivouac there for a while so they could get us ready to go help invade Japan. Which the thing fortunate about it, we were getting the horse laugh from all the other units. You know, last there and first to go back for train for this. And, you know, those are the breaks. And it ended up we had the last laugh because I can't remember now with war ended, well, we were still, I think we had just landed in the States at Patrick Henry or some such place. Or well, we were just before we were, anyway, the war ended. Before we even got back to Camp Carson, or back to the country here.
You mentioned that you knew Felix going over. Did you form any other close bonds or friends with?
Yes, I'm still in touch with. Art Schwartz was a sergeant. In fact, in the current blizzard, there's a picture of him and myself and I can't remember another member of my unit, my section or whatever. Taken. We're working. We found an old motorboat, and we tried to recondition that thing to get it to run. This is right after we had gotten to Garda and the war ended. So you know there were some. We had units out, kind of loosely guarding against the partisans, but for all intents and purposes, it was pretty well over. And we worked on that sucker, trying to get that thing to run a little bit there on the lake. It's a good picture. I was surprised to see the picture.
I think I saw it.
Is that?
Yeah. I saw it.
You may have. That was kind of a fun time. So that we had a good experience, but a lot of, there were several that I'm still in contact with. A couple of former lieutenants. One of them, I think, has passed away. Another, Ed Harris, was another second lieutenant who joined, I think, right after Felix Bloody and I were assigned the unit. And I haven't heard anything from him in years, and I can't find him even listed in the roster now. So I don't know if he's passed away or what. I don't know. But I've been active with the Arizona chapter of the 10th Mountain. And so I have a lot of friends from there, too. Nobody else would come to H.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned, Robert, about going back to Italy.
Yes.
And what was that experience like going back to those places?
That was really, really remarkable. Of course, my wife had never been there, and she was still able. She was able to travel. It was, a little difficult, but she had already suffered. She was recovering pretty much from that, at least to some extent. She's never recovered from it, but nevertheless, she had never been to Italy, and I was just astonished at how highly they thought of us there in the hill country, especially, and even up to Riva. It was a very moving experience. It was definitely And the most significant thing, one of the most significant things was of course, in addition to all the company, we went to the cemetery in Florence, 3 or 4 of us, Phoenix Bloody, with us in that group. And that was a very moving ceremony. We found the graves of Captain Neely and the radio man, who was just a young kid, really. That was, I don't know if you've been there or not, that is such a well-kept. And it was a day when they had ceremonies. It also happened to be the weekend when Bob Dole and his wife, they had come over to Italy for something, and we were visiting some of the hill towns, some of the places that the division had moved through. And he and his wife came up to one of these hill towns. I can't remember the name of it now. I'd know it if it were mentioned. And while we were there, and of course that was kind of a nice little reunion, for everybody. And of course we met him and spent quite a while talking with his wife. It was a very, very nice person, very, very competent. So it was a very worthwhile. In addition to the sightseeing, I saw things that I really hadn't taken the time to see, and they had the opportunity really. But we went to Pisa and Leaning Tower, went to quite a bit of time in Florence, went to Venice, of course. So it was good for my wife, and it was good for me to go back. And it was very, very touching how sincere, how genuinely those people in the hill country, how they feel about the 10th. Great folks.
Yes, they're very grateful. They're very grateful.
Good folks. It was a good experience. We've been going to go back again, but my wife's health hasn't been real good. We may try to go back the next time if she feels up to it. Was it 204?
It'll be a 6.
206. 206, of course, 206. Not 204. If we can imagine, we will.
I hope you do. If you were to sum up your time with the 10th, what would you say?
It is absolutely a first-class outfit. And my privilege to serve with them. That's it.
Parker, can you tell me your name and where you were born and the outfit that you were in the 10th Mountain Division?
I was born in Newton, Utah, March the 3rd, 1926. My name is William Dwayne Parker, and I was in Company A, 86th, 2nd Platoon, 3rd Squad of A Company.
All right. And where do you remember when you joined and where you did your basic training?
I graduated from high school around the 26th of May in that area of 1944. And I was inducted in the Army in Fort Douglas, Utah on the 13th of June of 1944, and went to Camp Walters, Texas for basic training. One basic training was, I guess about over. There came a notice on the bulletin board that you could enlist or volunteer for the 10th Mountain Division, and that sounded good to me. And so you had to have 3 letters of recommendation. So I wrote home to my mother, and she got the 3 letters of recommendation, and I turned in the application. And just prior to the end of my basic training, I was informed that I was to report to the 10th Mountain Division in Camp Swift, Texas. And I knew they were in Camp Swift because when I was traveling on troop train from Fort Douglas to Camp Walters, our troop train was on the same siding with troop trains from the 10th Mountain, and I talked to some of those people, and they said they were going to Camp Swift for flatland maneuvers. And so I reported in at Camp Swift on the 11th of November, and we left Camp Swift for Norfolk, West Virginia to go overseas on Thanksgiving Day.
When you were in Camp Swift, and we were just there just a few days ago, did that bring back any memories or anything you can recollect about Camp Swift?
As far as I'm concerned, Camp Swift had changed so much in appearance that I don't remember anything. It didn't look familiar to me at all. So, but I understand there was some great changes that have taken place there. They used to be a lot bigger, and I guess a lot of buildings, and I didn't see any of those when we were out there the other day.
But did it bring back any memories, or I should say, what can you recall about your days at Camp Swift?
Well, my days at Camp Swift were so short. I was there from the 11th of November to Thanksgiving Day, which would have been about the 26th, so I was only there 12, 15 days. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have much experience in Camp Swift. It was still kind of warm in Texas at that time. I'd been in Camp Walters and sweat tons of water for the period of time that I was there for basic training.
Well, you probably spent about as much time on board ship going from Virginia to Naples than you were while you were at Camp Swift. What was it like being on board ship during that time? Any memories of your travel across the Atlantic?
Well, about the second or third day out, we hit a storm, and the ship was so overloaded, and we went on the USS Monocattini, which was a luxury liner that had been converted to a troop ship. And man, I tell you, down in those holds, it was hot, and that rough weather, rough sea, everybody was sick. I was sick for about 2 or 3 days. And then after that, I spent every minute I could on deck, and that helped. I didn't have any trouble with that.
Yeah, I understand a lot of individuals got
And the
sick
food
on
wasn't
that.
the best either on that ship, or at least I didn't think so.
I know that the 10th then eventually went up to Riva Ridge, Belvedere area, and do you remember what it was like on that first day when you participated in that, or how did you participate in that first day?
Well, we landed in Naples on, I think, the 23rd of December, and went from there up to Pisa, and then we went somewhere else up a little further above Pisa, and then we went online at Curciola on the 8th of January. And then, of course, so we weren't doing any fighting there. We were it was a holding situation. And then I think the attack on Riva Ridge was 21st or 22nd February, about in that area. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, they trucked us to within some distance. I don't know exactly the distance. In the dark, and we hiked into those villages at the bottom of Riva Ridge. I was in the A Company, 2nd Platoon, and they detached us from the rest of our company. Company A was basically back on the back end of the ridge, and where we were, it was out on the very point, just up from Rocco
Cornetta or?
Yeah, Rocco Cornetta. And we were out there, we were a platoon only out on that point. And we hiked, when we got off the trucks that night, we hiked in the dark with our pack and everything, you know, and went down into the little village of Farney and just knocked on the people's doors and moved in with them. And stayed there all that night and all the next day. And when it got dark the next night, we started climbing Riva Ridge. And we got up there about, well, just as it was breaking day, and there was a kind of a foggy mist up there when we first got up there. And we run into some resistance right off, and then we along, I don't know just how much time, a little bit of time went by, and our platoon leader, Lieutenant Luce, he came to one of the guys and said, I want you to come with me. We're going to go scout around the point of the ridge here. And they left, and pretty soon the lieutenant come running back out of breath. They'd run into some Germans, and Godwin, who was the soldier that went with him, had been shot, and they chased Luce around, and he came back up. And funny about it, we didn't hear the shot, but he was the first one killed in our outfit. And then later on during the night, we started to receive counterattacks. And the next, well, there was quite a bit of activity, and we had driven the Germans off, and they were trying to get back, because that was the key point of Riva Ridge, because that's where they had their artillery observers, so that when they attacked Mount Belvedere, without us controlling that ridge, they could just shoot the heck out of our people. In fact, I understood they had tried to take Belvedere a time or two before we got there, and that was the problem. They couldn't. And I think the Germans were so surprised to have us come up over that steep, and that is a very steep ridge. I'll tell you, that is rugged country. And they were, I don't think they thought that would ever happen. But we had people that were well trained and knew what they were doing, and they had the will to take them, and they did. And we were cut off. My platoon was cut off up there for 3 days. The Germans kept counterattacking and kind of got around us, and we were about out of ammunition and food and everything else. And Colonel Hampton, I think they had tried, from what I understood, to break through to us a couple of times, and that hadn't happened. They hadn't been able to do it. And Colonel Hampton, he said, I'll get through to them, and he took a platoon or a group, I don't know how big for that, and he came through and got to us, and then we were relieved, and we went off the ridge at that time.
I have always been amazed at what you did. I had the opportunity to look at Riva Ridge, and it is quite something for you guys to have done that. From there, I know there were other battles along the way up into the Po Valley. Is there anything else that sticks out in your mind during that offensive there up into the Po?
Well, I might say one more thing about Riva Ridge. We went back in '85. They had a reunion. It was 40 years after the end of the war. And my wife went with me. And we had the opportunity to walk from where the 8 Company was back on the far end of the ridge. Her and I hiked all the way across the top of that ridge over there and found the foxhole that I had when I was there.
Wow.
That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we had it, and I'll tell you, I thought we were going to lose our lives getting off in there. It was so steep, and it was so, the grass and everything was slick, and we didn't have proper shoes to be doing what we were doing, or no ropes or nothing, you know. And sometimes we'd get to sliding down that ridge, and you just grab onto a vine or whatever to keep from losing complete control. My wife, I'm sure she thought she was going to die up there. But we made it down, but that was a real experience for us. Yeah, there was, and I can't name all the areas where we fought, but on the next time that we went on the offensive, it was on my 19th birthday, the 3rd of March, and we pushed off, and we had a lot of constant battle from then on for it seemed like a week or two. And that day on my birthday, that was when Toger Toko, the world champion ski jumper, was in our platoon. And the day he was killed, he and Takola was carrying 2 bazooka rounds, and he got hit with shrapnel, and it set off those 2 bazooka rounds, and it killed both of them. And I was just down on the side of the ridge from where they were, and hit Toko's helmet rolled down the hill right to where I was, and then just shortly after that, I heard that Takola had been killed up there on the top of the ridge. But that day, I started 7 foxholes that day. We just move, and as soon as you stop, you start digging in, you know, because you don't know how long you're going to be there. Had a blister that was the full size of the palm of my hand right there, and it was sharp shovels, you know, and your hand was on top. And that was really a tough day that day.
Yeah, that's something very memorable for your 19th birthday. And
yeah, I remember my 19th birthday very well. I had another experience along while we were in that course of battles along through there. One day I was told to take a message up to one of the other officers up on another part of the ridge or draw, and as I was going up this draw, all of a sudden I heard this whirling sound, and I looked up, and here come an artillery shell going end over end. I guess it had hit a tree and didn't go off, but it disturbed its trajectory. I hit the ground, and that thing landed just right so close So that was pretty lucky.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause otherwise you wouldn't have heard it, and,
No.
yeah.
And then I didn't go to the Po Valley. When we got off the line from that series of encounters, I had developed a hernia, and I was sent back to the 33rd General Hospital in Leghorn and had a hernia operation. So I missed the Po Valley. I didn't join the backup with the outfit until the war was over.
And when you rejoined him, were you still in Italy, or?
Yes, we were up on the border of Switzerland and Yugoslavia, up in the Alps there.
You probably developed some real close bonds with some of your other foxhole buddies. And does anyone stick out in particular? I know you mentioned some people you lost, but are any other names?
Oh, everyone in Company A. We have, to this day, we have I don't know, it's a close relationship, I'll tell you, very close. Oh golly, the captain, our company commander, Bill Needner, names keep slipping my mind. And he was terrific, and Lieutenant Luce, I think every man in that platoon would have followed him anywhere he wanted to go, because he was gutsy and cared and was a great leader. And most of the fellows were just that way. I had a close friend from Utah, Dale Archibald. We shared foxholes. I had a friend that I developed from Lubbock, Texas, and he and I shared foxholes and just close relationships forever. I could name just about every person in the platoon, and the relationships are all the same. That's just, and our wives, since the war ended and we've been having these reunions, they've developed the same kind of camaraderie as the fellows have, and it's just, this has been the most disappointing reunion because we've had so few here. Our company has usually had more than any other company in the outfit at these reunions. And of course, the low numbers, we may have had more this time, but I'm not sure. I never did find out for sure just what the counts were, but we only had, there was 11 of us here this time. And that's the lowest number. I was disappointed in the numbers. But we've had a lot die, and I guess that's, time's coming to all of us. But
And I think that's another reason why I really appreciate you spending this time to record this, so that this will live forever, and we want others to be able to know what that was like. Can you tell us what you did after the war? What did you do after the war?
oh, went home and went to work. My father died when I was 15, and my mother, I always felt needed help. I had two younger brothers, and I went to Utah State University for a quarter, and I decided, oh, I've got to make money. And that was the dumbest thing I ever did in my life, was not stay in school. But I felt I needed to help her. I should have stayed in school. And And after that, when I was only home 3 days, and man had a grocery store in the town. He wanted me to come to work for him, and so I needed a job, and I learned to cut meat. I was cutting meat. He had a locker plant. I cut meat and that for this locker plant. I was with him about a couple of years, and then we run a milk route, a home delivery milk route. We bought the milk from the dairy and delivered it, did all the collecting and everything, and financed it. Did that for, I don't know, a couple of years, I guess, 3 years. Then I went to work for Continental Baking Company, Wonder Bread.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for them for 5.5 years. And then I went to work for Gerber Baby Food as a sales representative. I worked for them for 34 years, retired from them in 1990.
You spent this time with the 10th, and if you were to sum up your time with the 10th, what would you say?
Well, being I survived the ordeal. It was a growing up experience. It was a good experience. I have no regrets about it at all. But I was one of the lucky ones. I survived, and the relationship and everything that we developed there has been important in my life. And it's been good and helped me grow up, and I appreciate that. When you get in a battle situation in war, you soon find out you have to be very responsible and grow up. There's just no two ways about it.
Well, Dwayne, thank you very much. Thank you for spending this time. And unless you have anything else you would like to share, thank you.
Well, I can't think of anything offhand, so appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.